Okay, welcome everyone to the February Elevate. Today we have Bryn and Krista from the budget office, and they are going to talk to us about Summit 360 or Anaplan, as I am still calling it. So they're going to give us a little bit of an overview on that and how that's going to work. I know some of you are involved in actually doing the data entry for Table 1, or what used to be Axiom and now is going to be Anaplan. And then we're going to have the second half will be Brendan talking about compensation and salary setting principles. And so that you will, as soon as we get ready to kick off here in March for the salary setting process, will be all ready. So I will turn it over to Bryn.
Great. Thank you, Deanna. And thanks for having us today. As Deanna mentioned, I'm Bryn Samuelson. I'm the Assistant Vice Chancellor for Budget Planning and the Budget Planning Campus Strategy team in Central Admin. And I have Krista Kromov, who's our Budget Planning Manager. And we are super excited to show you Summit 360. So let me go ahead and share my screen. A little bit of background if you haven't been following along with the project. Anaplan is the software, the name of the software, and Summit 360 is our internal branding of what we're calling it. I am also notorious for saying Anaplan instead of Summit 360, and I joke that my team needs to tase me when I say Anaplan. So if you see me do a sudden jolt, that's what's happening over here. But Summit 360 really encompasses what we're looking at with this software. So our first phase was basically building what we had in Axiom, doing our salary setting, annual labor planning, and our annual operating budget. But we have big dreams of building a lot more models for truly connected planning, things like tuition, compensation models, other things that we're doing in spreadsheets right now in a disconnected way that we'll be able to integrate within the Anaplan platform within Summit 360. So where this started, we are going into our last year of the Axiom contract in the fall of 2024, and that gave us an opportunity to look at other systems. What we learned through Axiom was that we have a very unique business process on our campus, and it required us to really customize that product, which didn't allow us to take updates. The product was fully owned by a third party, so making any changes took a long time, and there was also some latency issues as well as data integrity. So we selected Anaplan as the product. We went into some listening tours, project planning, build, and UAT. Many of you are probably part of UAT along with the School Medicine Dean's Office that was instrumental in the foundations building. So huge thank you for the efforts there. And then last March, we did a pilot deployment. So for FY26 or July 1, 2025 salary setting, we had all of the Central Services Administration departments using Summit 360. So this gave us a really good test case to make sure everything that we built was flowing through as expected. And we were able to take feedback from that pilot and do some continuous improvements and enhancements within the system this last fall. And that will continue to be the timeline that we look at. So we'll have the March through June planning cycle, and then we'll collect feedback from everybody who's in the system and have the fall kind of set aside for continuous improvements. One of the great things is that the system itself is very configurable, so we can make it exactly how we need it to operate for our systems, and we have in-house expertise. You may have heard from Cole Nash on our system side of the team, and we're working on hiring a few other Anaplan specific skill sets. So that brings us to kind of current day. What we're looking at is going into end user training in March and the March full campus go live with all schools, colleges, and central admin using the system. The proposed timeline that we're looking at for FY27 salary setting is kicking off March 16th. And then we have a tentative due date for the orgs to be and the rosters to be submitted to the School Medicine Dean's Office on April 10th, noting that there might be earlier deadlines within departments, divisions, if you have a lot of layers that those approvals are needing to go through. We're really looking at salary setting primarily for this phase one kind of March, April timeframe, with the caveat that CU Medicine budgets have an earlier timeline than the university side, so there might be distribution updates if there are Fund 80 impacts that need to happen during this March-April timeframe. And then, of course, always want to call out that nothing is officially approved until the Board of Regents April meeting in terms of compensation. So what we're doing right now is planning, anticipating for that merit pool, but nothing is approved and nothing should be communicated until we have that final regent approval and executive approval. The other thing I want to note, obviously, this is a School of Medicine meeting, but we built the Summit360 platform to serve the entire campus. So there might be some things that you see within it that don't pertain to the School of Medicine or maybe aren't applicable to your area, but just know that that's kind of how we built it. And if there's anything, Deanna or Wumi, that you want to jump in on that are School of Medicine specific policies, I don't want to misrepresent anything once we get into the demo. You may have seen this email come out when I show you the roster. What we're looking at in Summit360 when we go live is a snapshot of HCM data as of March 1st. March 1st falls on a weekend, so we're saying anything in HCM that is fully approved by that Friday, February 27th will be part of that initial roster snapshot. So we have, I guess, a couple weeks here through the end of February to really clean up any data mismatches or any anticipated changes to be captured in that snapshot. And it is truly what's approved in HCM on March 1st. So if you do an entry on March 3rd and backdate it to the 1st, that won't be part of the snapshot. Or if there's an entry in HCM that's not approved, that also will not be part of the snapshot. Some of the common things that we have seen in past years are FTE. So Summit360 uses the position standard hours from position data as our FTE. And sometimes there's a mismatch between the standard hours and the job data FTE. So we highly encourage looking at that data and doing any cleanup to the extent possible so we don't have salaries that are out of line with the FTE. Also pay components, making sure that the right pay is on the right component for base M, base sup, and base admin. It's always a best practice to make that change within HCM rather than using the salary setting Anaplan to do that. And then, of course, funding distributions, just making sure that all positions have funding distributions. The training for the Phase 1, we're looking at doing 2 live trainings. We'll also have recorded trainings available, and then we'll have drop-in virtual and in-person office hours every Tuesday throughout the planning cycle in the Fitzsimmons building. The team has also worked really hard on doing a lot of on-demand videos, so a lot of how-to guides and video snippets, as well as frequently asked questions that are available on the Summit360 SharePoint site through Teams. And then, of course, our email for any questions is summit360@cuanschutz.edu, should you have any questions at all. All right, we're through the kind of boring stuff. We'll get into the actual system here. So to log into Summit360, we can go through the portal under Business Tools, and there is a Budget tab, which will take us to Anschutz and Denver. Denver is also doing their own implementation of the Anaplan product, completely separate from the Anschutz side, which is another great thing about the transition off of Axiom is that we're not doing a combined rollout. And then this will take you to the different options. So what we have currently built out in Summit360, operating budget, labor planning, where we'll be focusing today. Summit360 resources, this will take you to the SharePoint site that I mentioned, which has the overall project plan. You can kind of see where we're going. The foundation here is salary setting, operating budget, and the data hub, but we're looking at building a lot more models. We have FAQs and a lot of training resources available through that SharePoint site. We'll also have mid-year, so for the January 1 BSI eligible faculty, we'll be using Summit360 for that. For this demo purpose, I will click on the labor planning icon. And this takes us to a position planning landing page. So it's just like it sounds. It has all of the links within Anaplan for position planning. This first section is mostly administration, kind of back end. So I'll scroll down here to the meat of what we're looking at with the position planning. Position planning it's twofold. It's salary setting for July 1, but it's also closely intertwined with our budgeting since our salaries and benefits are more than 80% of our overall budgets. It makes sense to intertwine the two, but you'll hear me reference things that might be more budget related, which you may or may not have a role in, but I think it's helpful to see how it's all interconnected. So each of these has a link that will take you to the pertinent roster. You can see we have the employee classification separated out. So we have classified staff, faculty, and PRAs. I know School of Medicine doesn't have PRAs, but other schools still do, and university staff. We can also navigate. There's two ways. You can always go back to this landing page. I like to use this drop down, which has the same options. So I'm going into the 4 series, and we can see those same page links for classified staff, faculty, PRAs, and university staff. For salary setting, classified staff salaries are set by the state, so there's not any active decisions that are being made. Our office will centrally populate those across the board or step and range adjustments within the classified staff rosters so that they're there for budgeting purposes, and budgeted speed types can be updated via that roster, but I won't spend too much time there. And then the faculty and PRAs and the university staff is really the bulk of the pages that we'd be focusing on for the July 1 salary setting. The rosters are almost identical with the exception of one column that university staff has. So I'm going to go ahead and click into the university staff roster. But again, the functionality is going to be very similar between the two. I'm in the test environment here, so we have some dummy data that we're looking at. But the first thing that I will show is this drop down will be on every page, and it will show anything within your security or your data profile. The way that we have this built is based on the finance org tree structure. So in this test environment, I only have access to org 30063. If you have node level access, if you're at a department or a division level that has an H node with other 5-digit HR departments underneath it, then you would see each of those node levels with all of the departments that you have access to. And then within each of those departments would have every single position available to you. I love this search feature that you could search by first name, you can search by position number, you can also search by employee ID, even though it's not in this list, and it will quickly take you to that position if you're looking to do just kind of a one-off. All right, I'll orient here on the roster. There's a lot of data here. In the first column, we have the position number and the name. We have our employee ID, our job record number. You can see job code, position working title. We wanted to include as much data as people would possibly need, but we understand that this data is not necessarily required for everybody. If this is noise in your roster that you don't want to be looking at, this functions very similar to Excel, where you can right click on the column and hide it. And that will stay hidden when you come back and log back into Anaplan. So as long as you don't clear your cache, those choices will stay hidden. If you forgot that you hid a column, which I have done several times, this icon up here with the eyeball and the underline will tell us when we have anything hidden. So before you freak out and submit a support ticket, look for that underline under that eye icon. And if you click that, it will allow you to show all the columns or show all the rows that you may have hidden. So going across here, a job code change. This is a functionality within the faculty series. So if there are promotions throughout the tenure cycle where a job code is changing, this is just for informational purposes only. So we work closely with the dean's office to precede those job code changes on the faculty side for promotions. I'll stop there to also say the only thing that actually will feed to HCM from any of these changes is going to be our proposed salaries. So anywhere where there's a job code change, the FTE change, funding distribution, or end date, those are primarily used in Summit 360 for budgeting purposes, and they don't feed directly to HCM at this time. That might be a continuous improvement enhancement, but just wanted to do the call out that those job codes, FTE, and funding distributions would need to be changed directly in HCM. So then we have our current FTE. Again, that will be the FTE or the standard hours out of HCM as of March 1st. And then we have a couple of columns for merit eligibility. So anyone who is hired after February 1st or had a job code change would be ineligible for merit. So this Boolean would be not checked. In my dummy data here, everybody is eligible. But if somebody was hired after February 1st, they would be on this roster. This would not be checked, but you would have the ability as an end user to override that merit ineligibility. That is a pretty rare scenario, but we built the system in a way that we wanted to make sure that end users could accommodate those scenarios on their own without having to go through a central office and delay the timeline. But we also need to make sure that that is auditable if somebody is going in here and overwriting merit. What would happen is you would see conditional formatting. I'll make you a little sick here as I scroll all the way over in this merit eligibility override justification. So if you clicked that Boolean to make an employee eligible, we would also want to make sure that there's enough justification in this column. Maybe somebody changed departments, but they didn't actually have a job code change, and that's why they're eligible. Or maybe they aren't eligible for merit, but would need a different kind of increase. Come back here. And then we have, so this is the one column that I referenced that's on the university staff page that doesn't exist on any of the other roster pages. And this is the up to minimum adjustment. So this is going to be the amount that's provided for anybody who is truly under the minimum of the newly established range that comes from central HR. And this column would be used for just the amount necessary to get the person to the bottom of the range. So let's pretend that this position here is exactly $2,000 below the minimum of that new range for the planning year. We would enter that minimum adjustment here to get their base to the minimum of the range before we start applying any of the additional increases. The downstream impact of this column is that any of these increases will flow to HCM as the action reason min or minimum wage adjustment. So we want that truly to be just the amount required to get them to the minimum of the range.
Bryn, you just went on mute.
I'm back. Okay,
There you
that
are.
was weird. Thank you. So this is the only adjustment that will go in is that up to minimum action reason in HCM. Deanna, I saw you come off mute. Do you have something?
Yeah, so on the bring to minimums, will the departments populate that, or will it be pre-populated for them based on the new ranges?
That's a great question. We had talked about if the timing works out that we have those data points, we can pre-populate those before we have departments going into the system. And I think that would probably be the best practice since we have that data point, but would work with your team.
Okay, and then follow up, does the bring to minimum impact the pool?
It does. That's a great question.
Okay.
Yes. So let me back this out. And I'll kind of show you over here in this additional insights panel. This merit remaining is going to be dynamically the pool that we're working with. So in this test scenario, we have 2.5% set as the global driver for merit. So this, I haven't allocated any merit. So this 22,919 is exactly 2.5% of the base M and base SUP of the March 1 snapshot. And then you can see so we have 22,919. As I put that 2,000 back in there, that remaining pool goes down to the 20,919. That is a great question. Thank you. Then we have our current base M, base SUP, current base M plus base SUP, current base admin, and current base M, base SUP, and base admin total pay. Again, we call those out because the base M plus base SUP is what that pool is being calculated on. Any of the stipends, the base admin, are not impacting the pool. So any changes to the stipend or any stipends that come in as part of that 3-1 snapshot are not part of the merit pool. Then from there, we have different inputs. We have merit as the first input, and then up to 2 additional salary adjustments available beyond merit. The merit can be entered as a percentage or a flat dollar. In this case, if I wanted to do a 3% merit, we type it directly as the number 3, not 0.03. That was one of the requests we had during UAT. And that's going to calculate the 3% on that base salary. And then any flat dollar amount would be calculated on top of that. So it always says the percentage and then the flat dollar amount in the calculation. Then beyond merit, we have reasons for equity, market, and promotion, and that would be likely specific guidance that you receive on when to use each of those drop downs when it's appropriate. We use the example of equity here, and it's going to function exactly the same as the merit, where you can do a percentage or a flat dollar or both. And then I think it's pretty rare, but if you had another adjustment, you could make up to 3 beyond the up to minimum. So then we scroll over and we can see that the total adjustment for this position is 8.23%, a total increase of 7,255. And then we get into the stipend columns. So stipend, that base admin component of pay, could also be adjusted by percentage or dollar. I believe School of Medicine has a very defined process for stipend, so it might not be applicable within this salary setting, but we did want that functionality built in.
Yeah, that's correct. If you're going to make changes to stipends, we do it outside of the Anaplan process. And there's information on our intranet on how to do that.
Perfect. Thanks, Deanna. So then we have the ability to update the proposed FTE. So by default, the proposed FTE will match the current FTE. If there is anticipated to be an FTE change effective July 1, and you want those proposed pay components to reflect the new FTE, this is where you could select the update proposed FTE Boolean and enter what the proposed FTE would be. And you can see that those proposed components of pay were proportionately adjusted to reflect, in this case, a 0.5 FTE. So that's really future looking. If FTE changes after the March 1 snapshot, but during your planning process and you want that current data to be reflected, Krista will show one of the coolest features within Summit 360 of where you can pull that in to have your current data accurate. So then we have our proposed pay components, and these are the amounts that will ultimately be part of the merit upload for July 1. And we have that same format of base M, base up, base admin. And then we get into our justification columns. So here you can see that this comment field is conditionally formatted in red. And that is because we entered an increase that was 8.23%. It was more than twice the pool in this demo using 2.5%. Anything at 5% or higher would be triggered to require this salary justification. So School of Medicine is always amazing with the wording that's used for those justifications, but that's exactly what would be entered within this cell. Can't spell. And then as soon as you enter that justification, that conditional formatting should go away. There we go. Took a second. The other thing that we would say is a salary increase justification field is part of the report that goes to executive leadership, ultimately goes to Chancellor Elliman and CFO Carruthers for their review. So we try to keep this column really limited to just those increased justifications for those that are over twice the pool. If you have comments internally within your department or that you want to track explaining why somebody got the increase they did or an FTE adjustment, you can use this comments column, and we do not pull that column into the executive report. And then we have that eligibility override justification that we scrolled to earlier. And our performance score, we have a bit of an overlapping timeline, but our ultimate goal is to be able to pull those performance scores in as they're submitted. I think this year, our go live is almost exactly the same day as when performance scores are due. So that might be a rolling update that's occurring throughout the planning cycle. And then we get into some more of the budget column. So proposed benefits, these are budgeted benefits. These are not based on actual employee benefit selections, but they're based on an average of health, life, and dental plans that are applied across all eligible employees, and then the percentage-based benefits for fringe and for things like retirement, anything that's based on a percentage of salary. And proposed total salary with benefits, employee start date, the total proposed budgeted salary, and then we have this end date column available. That end date would be used for if you're expecting a position will terminate at any point within the planning year, you can enter an end date there and the budget will be prorated based on that end date. Again, it's not an end date that will go into HCM, but that can be used for budgeting purposes. I have somehow managed to make my dates formatted in the European version. That is not how it's going to show for you when you're within Anaplan.
Hey, Bryn, we had a question in the chat.
Okay.
Do you mind to just key in an end date and we'll just see how it impacts the merit pool or does not impact the merit pool?
Yeah, absolutely. It will not impact the merit pool. It's just for budgeting. And since we're looking at, let's see, I'll do September 30th. We do not have a change to the merit pool.
Thank you.
Thank you for monitoring the chat. So we have this target of the merit remaining. We also have this grid that we can click into the university staff merit pool and see a little bit more detail. So this was the starting merit pool, the 22,919. These are the merit adjustments that were entered. So that includes the up to minimum adjustment, the merit column adjustment, and then the equity and the market adjustments that I put in there to get to our merit remaining balance. Again, in this example, I only have the one org, so I'm just seeing this at the org level. If you have up to a node level, you'd be able to scroll to the node and the merit remaining would automatically adjust to show everything within the node. So there might be some orgs that are over allocated, but they're balanced out by orgs that have a merit pool remaining that balance out at the node 6 level, for example. None of these create a hard stop at the org level, but we do look at the node level 6 to make sure that adjustments are within the merit pool. Was there another question in the chat? I can't.
Just about whether both salary and benefits feed to CU Medicine's budget tool, which I'm certain, I think I was testing this earlier this week. So yes, both the benefits and the salaries will feed over to de facto.
Yep. Thank you. The other on the proposed side that I skipped specific to School of Medicine, one of the things that happens behind the scenes is the Dean's Office provides us the new BSI rates for faculty. So the new base M rate for each of the tenured faculty job codes. And we're able to do a global assumption behind the scenes that shifts the pay components for each of those faculty job codes to increase the proposed base M and decrease the proposed base SUP to be in line with those new BSI changes. So that happens behind the scenes, but would be reflected in the proposed pay components. And then going down here on our additional insights, we have our distribution details. So again, more on the budget side of things, but this is where if you had a Fund 80, this is where we would be doing the updates. So within distribution details, you can see that the details popped up right here. It's specifically looking at position 796008. If I clicked on the full roster, we would be able to see the distributions for all of the other positions. This is also seeded by the March 1 snapshot of whatever funding distributions are in HCM as of that time and can be edited for budgeting purposes. There's also conditional formatting that's available throughout. So you can see this is yelling at us because my distribution for this position is only 90% and everything needs to be 100% allocated. This won't create an issue during salary setting, but it would be a hard stop during budgeting. So in this case, I would change this speed type to 40. That conditional formatting goes away because we're now 100% distributed. It also has a project end date. So for any grant distributions, it's bringing in that project end date. And if that project end date occurs before the end of the fiscal year that we're planning for, that would also be highlighted in pink. I don't know if I have any here in these examples. Got a lot of auxiliaries here. And then we also have, we can adjust the start date and the end date. If a funding distribution is only applicable for half the fiscal year, for example, we can make those adjustments within here. And you can see that the salary, the benefit amounts would automatically be adjusted based on the distribution to that speed type. Also have the ability to delete distribution rows or create new distributions by position if you needed to add an additional speed type to the distribution. I'm going to go ahead and delete this for this purpose. I think that is kind of the bulk for the position roster page. I know I went through a lot of information there, but want to make sure that we have time for Krista to go into some of the reporting that's available and the most exciting page in all of Summit 360. So I will go ahead and stop my share and pause there.
We had one more question. Will we be doing a review? It just went away. New.
Of how we add positions and how they impact the pool. Yeah, thank you, Rebecca. Yes, at a high level, we can either add vacant positions, which are positions that already exist in HCM, or add new positions, which are projected for budgeting purposes. If vacant positions are pulled in, they do impact the budget pool. So we really only want to pull in vacant positions that are truly vacant and budgeted.
Mm-hmm.
Any new position that's pulled in would not impact the pool because it clearly has not been hired, did not exist as of February 1st. So that would not impact the pool. But that's also a great call out for FAQs that we'll have available.
Thanks, Bryn. Sorry for all the questions.
No, it's great.
On the new position, so like we have someone starting August 1st, a faculty member starting August 1st. We have assigned a letter of offer for them. So will we be able to include them and add, I'm not sure. I think a new position had to be created in order for them to have a recruitment. So I think there is a vacant position out there. Well, it's a new position, it's not a vacant position.
Yep. In that case, I would imagine that a position number exists in HCM and that would be available on the vacant positions page under your org security. It's going to show every vacant position that existed within HCM under your org, and it's dynamic if a new position was created. So you would be able to pull that into the roster. Functionally, it would add to the merit pool, but that's another process type discussion of how we're pulling those in. It doesn't sound like that's an existing budget line within the current fiscal year. So probably not appropriate to have it add to the pool. But those are just some of the nuances that we'll talk through kind of at department levels.
Okay, and then I would just add, can we have access to that vacant position report prior to our access to Summit 360, just to kind of have an idea of what is available there?
Yeah, you can pull a position report and just pick vacant positions out of the work center in HCM.
Perfect. Thank you.
Always great questions there. So I guess I get the opportunity to show you guys some more pages, and I think one of the best pages in Summit 360 that with your HR roles, I think you guys are gonna really like it. So I'm gonna start. I'm down here in the reports section of our drop-down menu on page 7.02 for the HCM variance report. And so what this report is showing is, let's pretend like it's later in March or maybe into April. This report is just going to show us anything that's changed since that March 1 snapshot. So it could be the job code changed, it could be pay, it could be FTE. And again, we have conditional formatting here. It's pretty helpful to see it here, but I'll show you the next screen where we can actually update the budgets. Before we go there, I just want to call out that this report, it's going to bring in the latest update. So I understand FTEs can change very, very often. So anything that you see here is just that latest update for that employee. I will go ahead and show what we've been kind of drum rolling this whole presentation, but it's in the 3 series, the position planning administration, and it's our roster administration. And so essentially this also is anything that has changed since our March 1 snapshot. Again, like Bryn showed earlier, we can toggle up and down our org tree by using the context selector in the upper right corner. I think I'm going to leave it on this org for now. This page has different sections, so I'll kind of walk through each of them. The first section here are our new hires. So maybe not salary setting, but maybe for the budget folks, they want to include that. They would check the box here and click the blue refresh button. And similarly, in section 1B, we have a list of terms that have happened since that March 1 snapshot. So again, we would, if they're not going to backfill the position, they could click the delete old roster line and click the delete button. And then the next section, it's kind of just a record of any terms that we did remove, just in case we want to think, do we really intend to do that? Do we need to go ahead and budget for those dollars if we're going to backfill them after all? The next section is those targeted variances. So this looks very similar. The section 1D looks very similar to what we just saw in that report. It's anything that looks different in today's HCM versus our March 1 snapshot. So it could be somebody's job code changed. It could be any of the flavors of pay. It could be the FTE. And all we need to do in Summit 360 is click the update button and then refresh, and magically updates our budget side of things. And then the last section is if somebody's funding distribution has changed. It's the same thing. We can pick and choose, because even those might change by the time we're starting to plan for July. We would click the update button here. One call out on this page is that there's a 2-day lag for any information once it's approved over in HCM. It feeds one night over to the CIW and then a second night over to the budget system. And then next up, I'm going to show one more report. So on my drop down on the top here, go back to the 7 series. And this one is going to be 7.09 for our salary setting summary. It's kind of a tongue twister. This page actually has 2 different context selectors. So again, you can select which org or which part of your org tree you want to be looking at this report. And there's a second one, whether you want to look at your faculty or just your staff. This might look familiar to some of you. What we're doing here is we're kind of just showing an extra review step of do we have any outliers? What's kind of the average in our salary recommendations? And so these first 2 grids, we're just counting by bands, whether it's 0 to 2%, how many people, 2 to 4%, the same thing with the dollars down below. This card, we're still kind of working out some kinks, but this card was displaying some averages just by, I think, department level. And here we have some averages of how are those salary dollars or salary increases spread across merit, market, etc. And then lastly, we have our faculty rank. So that's sometimes helpful for different reporting or different analysis that your team might have. And on the lower part of this screen, we have our full roster. So again, I'm at the all employee categories on the top here. And so this is the one part of Summit 360 that shows everyone all together. If you remember when Bryn was showing earlier, our roster pages are split by faculty and staff. But this is the one page that we can see everyone together. And then while I'm here, I just wanted to point out my favorites. I know Bryn talked about kind of hiding things, but I have found the filter really helpful. So one thing that I find myself doing a lot is I'll highlight a column and then click filter, and then you can follow the prompts on the right side of the screen. So it just kind of helps filter. Maybe you have a certain question on job code 1104. Excuse me. And then the other cool thing that I use a lot is on each of the pages, we can find this exports link. And this is probably going to be really helpful for the HR folks here because we haven't talked about pennies at all. And when we export the data, any kind of grid that has salaries on them, once we're in Excel and we format the dollars, then we can see our pennies. So I'm kind of like doing a cooking show here, but I already exported that page. And so you can see that we can format here, and now we have pennies finally. I know some of you people are excited to see pennies, where typically the budget world lives in whole rounded dollars. So I just wanted to show those few pages. That's the end of my presentation. I'll stop sharing and we can open it up for some questions.
Okay, so
Everybody's
just right, you can run that report and see who has changes, but then you can click on those, people and update it, and it'll update immediately.
Mhm. Yep, in real time. We've seen it. And also another thing we didn't really show, but we can have multiple tabs of Summit 360 open. So as you're working on the 3.04 page of bringing in those updates from HCM, it's really cool that almost real time we can see it in the rosters. Nancy asked if shared positions will have the ability to be updated by both parties, and unfortunately not. It's the owning department has that access. I want to show a report. I'm really sorry. I can't, I didn't think to have it prepared and have the names blurred out. But there's a really nice report. It's available from March all the way through June that shows those shared positions up to the, I want to say org level 6, and that as you're doing your budgets and the owning department is also doing their salary setting, you can check there's like a reviewed box, like, hey, Nancy saw this, I'm aware of this, we're good on this. And so I'll show it next month. I'll show it in the big trainings in March.
See, Rebecca has her hand up.
Hey there. Okay, so if we have someone who terms and shows up on that report you just showed, Krista, and we update the term so they would fall off of our roster, but we plan on filling that position the next fiscal year, so we want to include that dollar amount in our budget. Would we want to then just include a new position and estimate what we think that salary will be?
That's an option. I saw Bryn was about to answer because I could go both ways, that it would be
Right.
cleaner to keep the same position number. But I'm not sure, Bryn, do you have other advice?
I was going the same way to the extent that we always want the budget to be connected to the position number if it's a real position number, but it could go both ways. So in that example, Rebecca, you could remove the termed position from your roster, and then that position would then in HCM be a vacant position. So you could go into the vacant positions page and add that to your roster, and it would just show as the position title without the person's name. So the data would look cleaner, but you would still have that position number and the budget associated with it.
Okay, I gotcha. That makes sense.
You could choose
Thank you.
not to remove them from the roster and it would still be budgeted on that position. They just wouldn't be part of the upload, is because they didn't have a change, so nothing would go into HCM on July 1 for a salary change.
Okay, got it. So we don't have to pull in everything from the report that Krista showed. And also, so we could leave people out there and HCM wouldn't necessarily be impacted. I'm just trying to think, like, if I don't update someone's FTE, is that going to mess up the upload then? Like if someone changed their FTE in HCM and it flowed over to the report that Krista showed, and I do not update the FTE on the roster, what gets uploaded?
Yeah, in that case, you would want to update the FTE so that the proposed salary would be proportionately in line with the FTE that changed. Otherwise, you're going to have that mismatch where you're going in and doing a manual adjustment in HCM after the upload. So FTEs, you definitely would want to hold that in.
Okay, so maybe just on your FAQs, having something that says exactly which of those actions we do want to pull into our roster, because it seems like maybe we don't have to pull the terms in, but we definitely need to pull the FTEs in.
Yep,
Great.
that's really good feedback.
Right.
Thanks for the clarification.
Any other questions for Bryn or Krista? Going once, going twice. Go to the training, go to the office hours.
Yes, there is so many like fun tips and tricks and stuff that I will not geek out over, but we'll highlight throughout the trainings and throughout the drop-ins. So really appreciate the time and the space for us to join here and share what's coming next month.
Thanks so much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
All right. Mr. Bravo, you are
Are we
up.
ready? Okay. Let me get this going. Can you guys see the screen? I haven't had to present. I just realized in a little bit. So showing a little rusty. Okay, sweet. So I'm going to talk about compensation and salary setting for faculty and staff. So to get started, just some faculty salary setting notes. So for faculty compensation, so there are not set scales for faculty. Those are made more within the department. Some departments have developed scales and consistent ways that they evaluate candidates they bring in. A common way this is done is market data is used for specialty for that department. The default is the AAMC benchmark survey by specialty. And then you can also supplement that AAMC benchmark survey data with other relevant salary surveys. Some other examples are Sullivan and Cotter and the MGMA surveys. Another good way to look at how competitors are paying is to look at current postings from other organizations. I know sometimes surveys might lag a little bit with the information. So going out and just seeing what competitors are paying is one way to see that. And then also please note that you cannot ask about current or previous compensation to candidates when negotiating. And then when you're looking at setting a salary to offer, make sure you consider experience, so time since their degree and time and rank, and then make sure you're evaluating for internal equity when bringing those people in. This next one, I want to talk about just the importance of using the correct BSI amounts. So those updated amounts come out each fiscal year. This screenshot is for this current fiscal year, so we haven't gotten the new fiscal year BSI amounts yet, but once they are ready, we'll be sure to add that to our intranet site. Malia will put it with our monthly email. But what these amounts are is it's for assistant professor and above positions, and it's what they need to be paid at. So if you're going to bring in an assistant professor, they have to be paid at least that minimum amount listed. And then in HCM, it's going to be that base M is the minimum amount required to be paid in that specific job code, and your base up would be the remainder of that regular salary. So next slide, we're going to talk about change in existing stipends. So that BSI, all that stuff is the regular salary for faculty. If you do have an existing stipend, to increase or decrease those, we can make those updates, but they have to be during the Summit 360 process, so either July 1 or January 1, but it is done separately. So in order to make those changes, you're going to want to draft an addendum lieu, which details the changes being made to the appointment, and then submit that change through the Faculty Affairs EFRF process. Make sure in that submission you describe the justification for the change in the notes when submitting that action. Faculty Affairs will review, approve, and then execute that addendum lieu. And then once you get back that fully signed lieu, it is then the HR VP's responsibility to submit that transaction in HCM to either increase or decrease that stipend. And then just a note again, this change needs to occur during the salary setting cycle, even though it will be processed outside of that Summit 360. So just a note on that. And then if you want to end a faculty admin role, those can end anytime during the fiscal year. For that, you'll just need to draft an addendum lieu still to show that that admin stipend is ending. Again, submit that through the Faculty Affairs EFRF process. During that submission, make sure you're putting in reasoning for why it's ending. And then again, once you get that fully signed addendum lieu back, submit the transaction in HCM to end that stipend. And then just some notes for faculty salary changes. Changes to faculty compensation, including the admin stipends, can only be made during the biannual salary setting process. So either on January 1 or July 1. Units must stay within that CU Regent's prescribed pool amount, and then individual salary increases that exceed the designated percentage will require justification. So that pool percentage does always fluctuate, but justifications are needed if it's double what that pool is. So if the overall pool is 3%, justification would be required for any increase that's greater than or equal to 6%. And then a best practice tip, make sure you review your unit's active admin stipends at least biannually in conjunction with the planning cycle to determine if the stipends are still accurate and active, and whether there's potential equity concerns for those that are receiving those stipends, and then utilize the above processes to make any changes necessary. Are there any questions about faculty salary setting? Questions?
Brendan,
I will check.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Deanna.
Go ahead, Lindsay. No, go ahead.
You might know what I'm gonna bring up too, probably. No, just kidding. Sometimes the issue that we have with changing these faculty stipends is that the amounts are often based on an outside contract, like a sports team or something, and the contract will change. We'll get the final signed contract in like February, and we're all of a sudden receiving more money for this. And the intent is to increase the stipend for whoever, whatever faculty is affected by that. And we want to say, you have to wait until July to get that extra money. Like that's the issue that we sometimes come up on with these.
Yeah. So, I mean, the quick and easy way to do it is just post it for 5 days on the intranet, and then at the new amount, you can just change it. That's probably the quickest way to do it. And then you can change it immediately. The compensation committee is looking at maybe adding some additional earning codes specifically for sports teams, and that those kinds of responsibilities. So that I don't know, they're just getting started, but that might be resolving itself in the future.
Okay. I mean, I see that's a workaround or a mechanism, the posting. I hadn't really thought of just doing that for a salary change, but I want to know. I know we've tried to push a couple of those through. We're the problem children, but it's because there were like 5 months and they don't, get that extra money. So, okay.
Yeah.
I'll just think
Part
about
of
that
it
way.
too, Lindsay, keep in mind that the we have policies, faculty policies and regent policies that say when salaries can be updated. And they specifically say that we can only make those salary changes on January 1 and July 1. The posting way is kind of like gameplay. And it's not something that I would want you to get involved in regularly, because it's not something that I want you to get on like an audit list with the Board of Regents or something like that. So, I mean, if it's helpful to discuss that with the faculty member that, you know, we have these policies, we have regent policies on when we can make salary changes. We're going to make the adjustment on the next available time that we can make the salary change, whether that be January or that be July. I think that's a safer bet than kind of getting into some of the gameplay.
Yeah, no, I totally hear that. And I don't like the workarounds, but you know, sometimes I come up on them. So situations. Yep. Cool.
And I will say it's really important to review your active administrative positions. I'm in the middle of like researching like another 100 positions that apparently exist that have not been identified, and having to run those down. So it's really important that you know who's got these positions, even if it's just salary support, particularly from some of these funds flow agreements. So I would just encourage you to have your DFA, if you don't have access to this, have them run your position census report and review those. And this says biannually, but I would look at it like every couple of months and just make sure you have all of those captured, because what we're finding is that we don't. And as we are proceeding through this admin FTE and clinical FTE and education FTE projects, it's going to be really important that we have all of these positions captured. And we thought we had about 95% of them, but I don't think we do. So
yeah, I think we definitely have some good work around that and have a good base ADM spreadsheet that our financial team maintains, but there may be a few on our end.
I mean, and some people don't have stipends, they just have protected time, but it's important that we know who those people are too, so that we can, once we figure out how this is all going to work with the different kinds of FTE, that we're able to capture that.
Yeah.
That's not just for you, Lindsay, that's for everybody.
Yeah, no, I know.
Cool. Any other questions for faculty? And we'll have questions at the end too, if something else comes up. Now we're going to hop into university staff salary setting. So we're getting ready to create a range for university staff. We start with the job family. So that's our academic services, business services, HR, research. So what the job family is it's a group of jobs that, you know, involve similar work and require similar training skills and expertise. And then we get those job families and we use that job family to narrow it down to what we call a subfunction. So if you look over like academic services, we have admissions, advising, faculty affairs, financial aid, graduate education, and that subfunction helps further break down that job family into the smaller groups, and that helps us better differentiate specific roles to build that range. And then once we get those two differentiated, we then have the level. So that's where you see entry through director. So then with those three, we get the unique comp code that we talk about a lot. And then we use that unique comp code to help create the salary range for each level. And this allows us to have more accurate market data. And it helps ensure that we have market competitiveness and ensure internal equity for others that are in like roles. So just some more note on the staff salary ranges. There will be new ranges that go into effect July 1st of each fiscal year. So the new ones that we have created or are finalizing will go into effect this July. Please note that not all ranges will be adjusted. Each year just kind of depends on what the market's paying. That's kind of how we help determine if the range is moving or not. Employees that are below the new ranges must at least be brought to the minimum of that new range. And then Central HR should be providing fiscal year 27 ranges by mid-March to assist departments with their Summit360 process. And then just some more notes on staff compensation. So SOM compensation sets ranges for research services roles, specifically that are in clinical sciences, lab sciences, and information sciences. And then we also set the ranges for community practice and the healthcare roles within clinical immunology. And then central compensation sets ranges for all other university staff jobs within the School of Medicine, as well as all other university staff jobs across the campus schools and departments. So that'll be your business services, HR, academic services roles. So now that we know how our ranges are set, we have a specific model we follow when we are helping set salary ranges, salary approvals. So we have an SOM compression model. It's designed to establish consistent and equitable compensation practices via an objective and formulaic approach. And this was developed to help assist in appropriate placement of an individual based on their minimum qualifications for a job, as well as the candidate's personal qualifications. So we do that by creating, it's called a total qualification score. You'll hear that a lot. We call it TQS. And this is taking the relevant education in years. And then based off of that TQS score, it gives them credit for every year that they're above the range, and it places them in the model. So quick thing about TQS. The qualifications are evaluated and assigned. So for your highest level of education that you have, so if you have a master's, you get a 6, bachelor's, you get a 4, and then for each year of relevant experience, you get another point. So we don't double count degrees. So if you have 2 masters, you only get 1 count for the 6, or if you have like a bachelor's and a master's, we count your highest relevant degree. So we'd only count that master's for a TQS score and not like a 6 plus a 4. And then that TQS is mapped to the salary range for each role or position. And then just to note, so employee whose qualifications align exactly with the minimum qualifications of the role are mapped to the minimum of their salary range. And then each TQS point above the minimum qualifications for that role moves up 2.9412 percentiles in the salary range. So what we do is we take the salary range, we break it into 100 parts, so 1 percentile, and then each point there above the minimum TQS score, they move up 2.9412 percentiles. So the range you guys get is using that model, and then you get 5% above that and 2% below to help with negotiation. And then just some notes on salary setting best practices. So some factors to consider is what's the candidate qualifications compared to others, and then also looking at internal equity with that. So when we give you that salary range, we're looking at what school equity looks like and what company equity looks like when that comes from central HR. And then when it comes to you guys, it's important to use that range and see what department equity look like or division specific when looking at offering something within that salary approval. It's also important to note what the budget is and maybe what can be afforded for a position. That might also affect what level you're trying to hire in at. Also important to note the total compensation package. The salary that an employee sees on their letter of offer isn't the only part of their compensation. We also have the great benefits. We have the total compensation calculator that kind of breaks down what their overall salary looks like, including the benefits package. It's also important to note, is the position you're recruiting for a difficult to fill one? And is that a reason that maybe you'd want to offer like a recruitment incentive, or is it a reason like maybe you'd give like a higher merit? And then also looking at specialized, unique, or advanced skills. Again, is that another justification for why you'd want to offer maybe a little bit more within that range? And then for your management roles, looking at does one person have more years of experience as to why you maybe want to offer more, or is one role maybe supervising more than someone else in a similar role as to why you would try to justify giving them a little bit more money. And then just a couple more notes on best practices. New hire and promotional salaries must be established within that salary range. Salaries of candidates or employees at an early stages of their career will generally be in that first quarter of the salary range. And then those that are demoting will generally see a decrease in pay, and that's because their current role is in a higher salary range. So if they're moving to that lower level range, they're going to be placed in that lower range. So that's why their salary would decrease. And then generally employees making lateral movements should not receive additional or increased compensation for such movements. And then we also have a salary setting guide on our intranet site. There's a link here, and then these slides get sent out with Blaze monthly email. And now some guidance for staff salary setting. So one second. So prior to looking to merit, you want to make sure you bring everyone to the new fiscal year 27 range minimum if there was an increase. And then after you look at who has to be brought to minimum, make sure you're looking at what is needed to keep people in the same place in the new scale. So what that means is you'll get a roster that kind of has all of your staff's TQS scores and where they would land based off of their score and what role they're in. If that range is increasing, you'll want to see kind of what percent might be needed to move them to match their current TQS. And then you also want to review the TQS for those that are in like similar unique comp codes to stay equitably balanced with others in like roles. And then once all of that's complete, you'll then want to make sure you look at merit and performance review scores. So a best practice for that is those that like receive a 5 on their performance review should be receiving a higher merit increase than those that receive 3. And then I do have a couple examples to kind of touch on that. So the first one is Taylor is a research services clinical sciences pro. Her current TQS is 7.25, and she's making $54,000. Our range for clinical sciences professional is 52,721 to 88,571. So the first question, is she above that range minimum? Yes, she is. So we don't have to worry about moving her at all. Next, we look at what's needed to keep her in the same place in that new scale. So based off of her TQS, the model would place her at 55,092. So we're seeing that she's a little bit below that. And then looking at internal equity for other that are in like a similar TQS, similar role, we're seeing an average of about 55,300. So if we were to give Taylor a 3%, say the pool is 3%, if we were to give Taylor that 3% merit, it'd put her new salary at 55,620, and it'd put her above where the model would place, and she'd be a little bit above where the average is, and that's kind of a good spot to have her at. Another example we have Serena, who's a clinical sciences manager. She has a TQS of 24 and a salary of 104,000. That range for a clinical sciences manager is 71,244 to 119,690. Again, is she above that range minimum? Yes, she is. Based off of her TQS of 24, the model would actually place her at 92,637. So she's actually well above where TQS would place her. And then looking with others that are in similar, that average salary for them is about 95. So when we're looking at merit for Serena, she is paid considerably higher than others. So that's maybe where you consider maybe giving her less of an increase to give yourself more pool to give others that might need to be brought up to the minimum, or someone that's maybe more lower on the equity standpoint. But again, these are just examples and not something you have to fully follow. And that is what we have on staff salary setting. Is there any questions about that? I think we do have one in the chat from Amy. It says, if lateral movements do not generally result in increases, can you provide a scenario where someone would potentially see an increase? Yes, I can. So when a lateral transfer is happening, we still do a full comp review to see where they'd fall equitably. So generally when I do a lateral, if they're at where the TQS should be, we keep them there. If they're well below, we'll offer more of a range to help get them back in line with where TQS would put them. Another example is if they're transferring, let's say now, they wouldn't be eligible for merit. So then we build in a merit increase. So that way they still get a bump now since they wouldn't be eligible for merit in July.
Thanks, Brendan.
You're welcome. Are there any other questions? No, sweet. Okay, and then I just have a couple more slides on salary setting logistics. So just more on merit increase. So the regents approve a pool annually. Staff are only eligible for merit July 1. Faculty are eligible for merit July 1 and January 1. And during this merit season is when you should be looking at merit, equity, market, and compression adjustments. And then please also note that you must be hired or promoted by February 1st of that year in order to be eligible for merit. And then your performance review rating must also at least be a 3 in order to be eligible for merit as well. And then some more items on merit increases. Merit increase does not equal cost of living. We do get that question a lot, but those are two separate items. And for staff ranges, we look at merit. There's not a cost of living adjustment that's added in. Make sure you're looking at those performance review scores. Again, anyone that gets a 1 or a 2 won't be eligible. And then some do consider carving out part of the pool percentage. If you know you have a group that's maybe, say underpaid, but maybe they're a little bit lower that you want to focus on, maybe looking at those where you can move that pool money over to them. And then justifications, they are required if it's double what the pool percentage is. It's required for all faculty equity adjustments, and then they must be written in complete sentences. I know finance like to see 2 to 3 complete sentences with that justification to help make it easier, to help them easier understand what's happening. And then lastly, a note on promotions. So staff natural progression or other promotions must be submitted by April 15th and completed for a 5/1 start date. So May 1st is that cutoff for when the last time a promotion can occur. So we ask for an April 15th submission so we can ensure it meets that 5/1 paperwork deadline. And then if that is missed, the promotion in rank, any kind of that change won't allow it to be happen again until August 1st. And then for faculty promotions, make sure you're following that Summit 360 process. I believe they will be having a training on that coming soon. Deanna, have you heard more about when that would be coming up?
Yeah, so there's going to be a training on March 17th and March 19th, and then they'll have the office hours every Tuesday, I think, through April.
Sweet.
And the faculty, they are going to preload the faculty promotions, is what they said.
Cool. Cool. And then that is my last slide. There should be a thank you there, but it's fine. Are there any questions on salary setting? Nope. Sweet. Well, if not, you know where to find us. Happy Thursday and happy February.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next month. Oh, no, we won't see you next month because it's payroll cutoff. So we'll see you in April. Thanks.